Come out of the box.
Hello YouTube, cheers, and welcome to The Basement. My name is Bruce Lively.
And I'm D-Boy Slim.
The Basement is the first daily hip-hop debate show. From Tuesday through Friday, we tackle the most intriguing topics in hip-hop culture and the world around it. Today we ask a big one. Whose story is more credible? Cam, as in Cameron, or Jim Jones? Y'all know the beef is big right now. It's been going on all weekend. We're going to decide whose story is more credible. And with that being said, Lego.
Whose story is more credible, Jim Jones or Cameron, is the topic for today. I want to switch the narrative and just by saying, who has the most or least, no matter how, depending on how you look at it, who has the most least amount of facts? Like, all we could pinpoint in both of their stories is what's known to be factual, you know. And so I guess that is similar or maybe the same to credibility in their stories. But we always, it's a popular term nowadays. Let's talk the facts. Let's speak facts. Let me just start by saying this is nasty here. This is ugly because of the fact I was a Diplomat fan, day one. I was a Cameron fan, day one. As it pertains to the Harlem Diplomats, which is their name, by the way. People call them Dipset, that's for short. People call them the Dips. Whatever, you thought it was. The Harlem Diplomat. I guess we know, any of you that's followed Dipset, Diplomats from day one, I guess we all know by now that there is no Diplomats without Cameron as well as Jim Jones.
Facts.
That's day one. Why? Because they were joined at the hip together. They lived together, they hustled together, they ate together. I'm quite sure they cried and shot their gun together, These are facts right here. And so when, as it translated to the music, and we saw Cam start to evolve in his career, and deals come and go, he turned back to what he knew, which was his neighborhood, which was the streets that he knew and ran and was raised on, and which is Harlem. And at the time, like I said, they were his comrades, they was his brothers, they was, the people he hustled with in the streets every day. And the first one we saw, we heard him give reference to in the raps, the one he endeared the most was Jim Jones, which is why this whole discussion and beef and everything is funny and
it's sad,
to say the least. It is sad.
It's sad too.
So I'm gonna point out a couple facts about this. We got here in 2017. You have them beefing and at odds, and he went to tell Angie, well, Jim Jones is not from Harlem. Right then and there, I said, this is about to get ugly. Right at that point, I knew that this was about to get ugly and Cam was trying to, once again, get in the reaction. Somebody you hustle with from the age 12 or 13 or 14. Cam likes to say he didn't really hang with him until maybe 18 or 19 when he came back from college. But, there are some consistencies in both of their stories that makes it undeniable to say that Jim wasn't around at that time. When you talk about Cam's dead cousin's bloodshed, when you talk about the children of the corn and Mace teaching him how to rap, which Cam alludes to himself. These are all day one people. Cam went to high school, played basketball with Mace. Jim was around in those days. There's the first consistency in both of their stories, or maybe inconsistency in Cam in saying that Jim wasn't from Harlem. First of all, he was born in the Bronx, which we know, when he alludes to,
the Bronx.
No. Being born someplace and being from someplace is something different. You could be born someplace and not know anything about the place. So if somebody asks you where you're from, you're not going to say a place you know nothing about. You may say you're born there, but if you don't know anything about the place, how could you say you're from there?
Go ahead and continue.
But anyway.
We're going to get into that in a second.
But anyway, like I was saying, so that's the first consistency or inconsistency in Cam's story, in which I find to be truthful in Jim's. So if the question was, whose story's more credible, I would have to say Jim at this point. Let's fast forward in the story. Cam saying, oh, well, he wasn't really around, we didn't really run with him. And the one I found to be real funny is when the living arrangement, when Jim says, you know, they all lived in Jim's apartment in the projects. Now, you know, whether you want to admit to it or not, whether your pride allows you to, if you got the big ego, Cam, as we understand it, was always the boss. He was always the head honcho. Even Jim alludes to the fact he looked up to him. Cam was nice at ball, he was nice at rapping. In a city, New York City, that means something. That means a lot, even to this day. You play ball and you nice at rapping. But the fact of the matter is, there's another element to that, and that's getting up every day to get your money. And when it came to that, as I understand it, you live with Jim and y'all hustled. You hustled and you live with Jim. Those are just things I don't think could be disputed. And so no matter how greasy Cam try to come or whatever, I don't think you could dispute that. Which, when Jim is saying me and Cam was joint at the hip, me and Cam did everything together, this is why I believe Jim when he says that. If you live with somebody, naturally, you're gonna see and do what they do every day, if not every other day. You know, you're in tune with each other like that, to say the least. So, again, we say whose story's more credible? In my book, Jim at this point. You know, because Cam has disputed them even hanging around each other at certain points. And he said when he asked Cam about living with Jim, he said, oh, well, I had other places I could have went. It's not like nobody asked you if, you know, you had other options or you could have went to live with your girl or your baby mom. That wasn't the question. Did you live with Jim Jones at one point? That's a fact. That's why I said we gonna talk facts here. That's just a fact. You look at early videos when they're in the hood and everybody's Zeke and all them in one apartment. That's just a fact. Like, it's just, you can't dispute the facts. You can't take it back. That's just a few points. Like I said, those are facts right there coming from Jim, whether he cries or not.
Well, first of all, ain't nothing wrong with crying. Real men cry. He's an emotional guy. I'm an emotional guy. As far as the living situation, Jim himself mentioned, just like Cam mentioned, how they met. Cam was living at his grandma's house, which happened to be the same place where Jim's grandma was. So, like you said, Jim looked up to Cam. These are your words, as well as Jim's words. He looked up to Cam. So I could understand how he could misconstrue somebody going over there every day from his grandma's house, which happened to be in the same spot, to do your dirty work, to cook up in the pot and come out there and make your money, and the whole crew is there, and you might even stay over. It's different from saying you had to live with me. It has a different connotation. Cam said, on the other hand, my grams was there. I could have stayed anywhere I wanted to. I just happened to be there to do the work. It has a whole different connotation. So that's not a flaw in Cam's story. That's actually the facts as well. It's just the facts. It's just how you look at it. And this whole thing is what I'm going to tell you. It's all a matter of perspective. This whole thing is a matter of perspective. It's not that Cam is lying or Cam is wrong. It's not that Jim is lying or Jim is wrong. The credibility depends on perspective. Number one, if you find a hole in the story, we're gonna have to dig a little bit deeper. For one, Jim Jones said in his interview that I went to court for this while crying. I was on America's Most Wanted for this. First hole, it was not him on America's Most Wanted. The person on America's Most Wanted was named Carlos Zoo, is what they call him, Thompson. He was on America's Most Wanted, not Jim. As a matter of fact, if you look at the recording of it, it says a diplomat affiliate, not even a diplomat. And it starts to poke a hole in the authenticity of what he's saying. Why would you exaggerate that? Why would you exaggerate that, Jim? Everybody knows that you do your thing out there. But what happens is, as Hell Rel alludes to...
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
As Hell Rel alludes to, when Jim gets emotional, the story gets a little twisted. It's a matter of perspective. Let me give you an example. Cam spoke about this. Vado. When Vado texted him and said that he was talking about him in the streets, Vado texted Cam and said Cam was talking about him in these streets, blah, 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 blah. Cam was like, wait a minute, man. Hold on. Let's meet up. Let's talk. Vado's response, nah. You never believed in me anyway. And you start to see the emotional side come out. What did Cam do? He said he never picked up the phone for him again. Some people are like that, okay? Now, despite Cam's over-the-top personality, and despite the fact that he was, yes, dismissive of Jim Jones as much as he was arrogant and about telling the diplomat story, you're hard-pressed to find a provable untruth or exaggeration, as I found in Jim's. He just told it as it was. Okay? Especially when it comes to these personal and business dealings, when you find that somebody has a propensity to exaggerate once they get emotional, talk about they're on America's Most Wanted, and they're doing this and that, and how many times they busted this and busted that, at 40 years old, it's ridiculous. And you can find it easy from the perspective of Cameron to say, I can't continue to do business with this type of person. When you find that Hell Rel, French Montana, Max B, Jojo Capone, Yandy Smith, you listen to the stories, everything seems to go Cam's way. And everybody has the exact same story about Jim. Once he gets emotional, things get twisted and blown out of proportion. His exaggeration propensity is, multiplied. That's all I'm gotta say. If you asking me who has the most credible story, it's the one who has everybody else who is in it backing him up. As opposed to the one who we really love. We love Jim because we know that he means everything he says, but he has the propensity to exaggerate. I'm gonna stop there because there's a lot more to go into, but just respond to that for me. Let me know, how is that not the most credible story?
I don't quite understand what you mean when you say exaggeration, because,
he was not on America's Most Wanted.
Okay,
Carlos Thompson was.
You nitpick one circumstance.
You call it nitpick, and I call it exaggeration.
In which I'm sure Jim was either in a fight or in a shootout. These are things that we know about Jim Jones, and those are things that you can look up. Now, was he on America's Most Wanted for this particular instance? I'm not sure. I would have to do my homework, and I'm sure my partner has probably dug in and researched his. And that's okay, because, and like I said, anybody who's been in the streets and has been in one scuffle knows that none of them are fun, none of them are exciting, and if you making it out is the important part. Now, let's go down Jim's fights, Jim's beefs, because Jim has, for what people like to say about Jim being emotional, I call it loyalty. I think there's something that's being misunderstood in this whole thing. Jim's loyalty. In Jim's interview, he alluded to all of his beefs. Well, I won't even say all of them. I think he gave a percentage, and it was somewhere around 95 or 98, 99% of his beefs that you've seen, that we've been able to see. These are things like you can see footage of Jim Jones swinging or getting knocked out, stabbing or getting stabbed, shooting or getting shot. Like, these are beefs. These are all beyond verbal back and forths and you said this about me and I said, these are beefs that Jim Jones put his neck in the middle of. He said most of them came from standing up for that diplomat flag, for that diplomat honor, for that diplomat brand. It came from that, which, as we all know, and if it wasn't successful, we know it to be successful. If it wasn't, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about it. So let's go down a few. I like the Yandy one. You know why the Yandy one is funny to me and sticks out? It stems from TV. Love and Hip Hop, which is executive produced by Mona Scott, who is from Uptown as well, who is a big name in the industry, household before the TV and VH1 had even started, who does what Yandy does, who is someone who Yandy inspired to be. Started with Chrissy and Jim Jones. Mm-hmm. You know who came up with the idea and concept of Love and Hip Hop? Mm-hmm. Why is this relevant to the story? Jim Jones came up with the relevant, and which is probably one of the hottest franchises on reality TV or TV period right now. Love and Hip Hop. Yes, Love and Hip Hop Hollywood, Love and Hip Hop Atlanta, Love and Hip Hop New York, and all the rest of them. That started from the idea of Jim Jones. And why do I know that to be a fact? Look it up, people. Mona Scott said so.
That's a fact.
Mona Scott said
That's
so.
a fact.
So, let's get back to it. Now, there was Love and Hip Hop, and Chrissy was managing... No, I'm sorry. Yandy was managing Jim Jones.
Okay.
Beef started when personal started rubbing over in the line of business. From my understanding, it was always a business relationship there between Yandy and a lot of the Dipset, most of the Dipset. And it got messy because I don't think that because of TV and maybe how the TV show was scripted, what you didn't see is that Yandy Smith and Jim Jones' girlfriend didn't have a personal relationship before then. And I think TV tried to force them to have one, which did not work out. When it did not work out between Yandy and Chrissy, which ended up in a physical altercations, a couple, it spilled over into personal between Jim Jones and Yandy.
Yeah.
Now, because you have Jim Jones and Yandy beefing, as Yandy's husband now and her boyfriend back then, Mendici got involved. This ends up in physical altercation in the streets of Harlem, which one story is Jim came to St. Nick Projects to squash the beef. Mendici says he pounded Jim out. Jim said he got the best of Mendici. I don't know how that is. When the story first came out, which was years ago, it was said that Jim was jumped and robbed. Mendici says Jim put that out and he was never jumped nor robbed. Jim said he wasn't robbed for anything, but there was more than Mendici that I guess, was involved in the altercation. Will we ever find out? I don't know, but one thing is for sure, this is another physical altercation that Jim was in, which my point. But it stemmed from
going with this?
My point was it stemmed from a TV show. Cam had nothing to do with this. So when they say, oh, he's siding with Cam had nothing to do with it. They had nothing to do with Cam, or anything like that. But this comes from Jim and his TV show and Yandy being on it. No. Let's get into the Max B beef with French Montana. He alluded to the French Montana. This stems from Max B, who was given a 99-year sentence for somebody getting killed in a robbery that he was involved in. If y'all don't know the facts. Max B is somebody from Harlem, Cam's block, Lenox, I think 140th, that was always around. He has cousins and ties in Harlem that run deep, and he was a rapper. Jim decided to invest in, Jim decided to sign, Jim decided to give him the opportunity to shine. He decides that his best move, or Jim wasn't showing him the attention or breaking bread that he thought should be broke, and he decided to go do his own thing. Now, at this same time, you had French Montana shooting the DVDs. If y'all don't remember the Cocaine Cities, you had French Montana shooting the DVDs at this time, and they had a relationship because you had Smack and everybody competing. Fendi in the Gravy and the Come Up DVDs, you had everybody. So a relationship was forged between Max B and French Montana. So now you have Max B running around Uptown with the campaign, fuck Jim Jones, fuck the Bird Gang, whatever. This turns physical because French Montana and Max B decide to run up on Jim at the studio, whatever. No hands were thrown, anything. Again, Jim not only talks about, and this is why I say Jim's word is credible, and why him crying and about emotions runs deeper than what Cam was spewing, because he's been in the physical altercation. He has the scars to prove it. There's the footage to show it. He's not lying about this stuff. You sound like you had something to say.
You know, I am always impressed with your grasp of hip hop history, your ability to recall without the research many times, and that's awesome. I fail to see how this has anything to do with the credibility of Jim's story as compared to Cam's. You know what this sounds like to me? Let me tell you what you're doing is building the case that Jim Jones is bled for this and did everything he could for this.
Which is what he said.
And which is what he said. And I have no problem with that. But perspective. Jim Jones, at this point, from what you just said and from all my research, he sounds like the kid that comes home and every teacher gives him an F. And when you ask him, you go, what happened with this? The teacher didn't like me. Well, what happened with math? Man, that teacher don't like, he's racist. Well, what happened in science? Man, that teacher was crazy and they put me next to this one. Well, they said you had a bad grade in gym. What happened in gym?
Good analogy.
Man, the coach was over here and he did this wrong.
Good one.
You feel me?
No.
After a while, when when French Montana says, hey, I thought the beef was over with too. Jim Jones go on ESPN and he says, he comes off at the mouth and starts a crazy beef. And French is like, listen, I didn't even know it was beef like that. When Yandy Smith says, I was his manager, but not no more, and anybody who messes with you, which is another point I'm about to get you. When Mendici says it, when everybody else says it, just like how he started a business, this diplomats thing with Cameron, yes, he did start the Love and Hip Hop. But once again, the personal gets in the way of the business. This is a constant thing with him. And from his perspective, he's just being real. I feel you, bruh. He's just being real at all costs. But what you fail to understand is Cam is telling you that your real is getting in the way. Your personal gets in the way of your business because you have yet to grow to that level. I don't know if it's of competency or manhood or whatever it is. The dude, he's loyal. I believe that, and I believe from his perspective, every fight that he got in was justified. But when 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people that you're in business with stop doing business with you and all have the exact same problem that Cam said throughout 3 Instagram videos, is your personal gets in the way of your business.
Let me ask you this, bro.
That lets me know that the most credible one is the one with the most evidence. I'm not done. You spoke for like 20 minutes talking about a history of something that has nothing to do with what I think is the core issue. Now,
you saying that his emotions gets in the way of his business.
His emotion gets in the way of his perspective as far as his credibility.
Doesn't make his story any less credible.
So that's why I just said what I said. His emotions gets in the way of his perspective. Stories get twisted and it gets in the way of his credibility. So that is why Cameron is more credible. Not only does he have the more people backing him up, not only did you just back me up on the fact that every business deal this guy gets in, it's the same problem. I don't deny his loyalty, and I don't deny his heart. Dude's got more heart than anybody. The problem is, like a weapon that's pointed in the wrong direction, it's no use. So now seeing this in the light of a new perspective, you start to question, well, French Montana didn't have a beef with him. There's slight, miscommunications, but he went on ESPN and started a beef. French Montana said, well, it's because he had nothing else to do and he was trying to boost up his little career or whatever it was. And then you look at, well, Cameron said he came to me and said, let's start a beef. And then Yandy has a beef. And then Love and Hip Hop has a beef. All of a sudden, the credibility of Cameron shoots up major points. It seems like this isn't just something that happened or a one-time thing that he came with Cam. It seems like this is what he does to ensure his space or spot.
Pretty witty. That's pretty witty.
These are the facts. It's called a pattern. After a while, the pattern has been made, and the credibility goes to the one who ends up on the right side of history here. Without that pattern. I'm done. You go ahead and we're gonna shout out these people. Let me know how I'm wrong.
I'm gonna let you know real quick.
Please.
I would tell you what's crazy. Like, that's pretty witty though. That's pretty witty. I must say that's pretty witty. You know. However, let me explain to you where you're wrong at.
Please.
Let's go down Jim Jones' background and resume.
Oh, here we go.
You know, and then we can further understand why Jim is Jim, why Jim does what he does, right? Jim says, and it's a fact, you know, you can ask Uncle Ricky, you know what I'm saying? Like, Jim says he's from Weeks Ave in the Bronx. That's where he was born at. From what I know, Weeks Ave, you know, it's real out there. It's, you know, they get busy out there. And Jim will tell you he was born around the dope, the pushers, the users, and everything that comes with that. This is how a kid is born. My man, like, he gave the analogy of a school kid. By 12 and 13, Jim was the one not going to school with the gun. That's not, you know, and at one point that's normal for where Jim was at. And this is why, you know, when people, you know, it's easy, you know, me and my man had a conversation one time, and my man said, you know, it's funny when dudes go to rapping about stuff and people don't realize it hurts. This stuff hurts. Like, it's funny to us, it's easy to talk about and get technical and say, oh, he's acting like this off emotion and he needs not to let emotion. Like I said, let's run down the background. So let's fast forward. At 12 and 13, this was Jim Jones. Now, he moves to Harlem at this time, between 12 and 13, in which he's seeing the hustlers. He's seeing the addicts. He's seeing everything that comes with that. And he's living that. He's living that. He's moving from aunt to grandma. This is not regular. This is not regular, but like I said, in his world, this is what becomes regular. So my point in all this is that maybe to some, you know, the violence and him getting over emotional about certain situations, and probably it comes, a lot of it, I'll keep it 100 with y'all, comes from pride and ego, you know. But I just wanted to further let people understand who don't understand that mentality, that's embedded. You know, and why is that relevant? Because of the fact, it's not an excuse. Why is that relevant? It's because it's what drove him, it's what he thrived on to become successful. That's why it's relevant. It's why it was the difference between him still being one of those people out there that I'm talking about, and him being able, like he said, jump in the water in Italy and being on private jets, coming from the projects and the pissy elevators, and waking up and not knowing what they gonna do with their life. He took, like, you know what I'm saying? I can understand why a man cried with that. Like, that's a lot. He fought for that. You damn right he fought for that. So any disrespect, I can understand. We said his perspective. You said his perspective.
It's perspective.
I understand Jim's perspective. I understand Jim's perspective. You're gonna fight for that. At all costs. Every time. Every time. Yeah, he lost some fights. But at the end, I think we would all say, any hustler would tell you Jim is a winner. Why do we know he's a winner and you say emotions get conflicted with business? I disagree. Why? Because we're sitting up here talking about Cam and Jim Jones. Why are we talking about Jim Jones? How is Jim Jones still relevant in hip-hop today? He just signed a deal with Roc Nation. That's not emotions conflicted with business. You understand? You understand?
You understand?
If you dealing with Jay-Z, he'll tell you he wouldn't sign anybody. He's been through that. Beanie Siegel, he's been through that before, where emotions conflict with business.
He's not a label, he's a manager now. It's different. It's different.
Jim is about his business. No matter what you want to,
no matter what, about his business.
No matter what you want to say. So his emotions don't supersede.
Yeah, it does, because the businesses he had up until now have all been erased or eradicated because of his personal problems. He's doing a different business, yes.
Okay.
But the ones that he had are gone now.
No, the ones he did.
The Love and Hip Hop was messed up. The Diplomats has been thwarted. Right now, this is what the beef is about.
Jim Jones is still a brand, people. Jim Jones is still a brand.
And I propose that he uses beef to continue that brand. So the credibility goes to Cam.
Jim Jones, beef is Jim Jones' brand.
Okay.
That's what it was built on.
Anyway. I'll tell you what. Let's do the wrap up. The wrap up for me, 3 points. Known for exaggerating during emotional moments, i.e. the America's Most Wanted comments. Number 2, like the kid who comes home and it's never his fault why he gets a bad grade. There are too many times that everybody else says the same thing about him, and he continues to say it's their fault, not mine. And number 3, just like Vado, Cam doesn't deal with the people who do mix personal and business in a way that's not conducive for what he considers to be business. I don't think Jim lies. I don't think that he does exaggeration on purpose. I think that he's a loyal, honest dude. And he will be loyal even to a fault sometimes. But of the 3 things that I just said, the credibility must go to the one who has the people backing him, and the track record of doing this beef thing goes to Jim. He lost a little bit of that credibility. The most credible is Cam. What you got? Wrap it up.
All the thing I wanted to say was, like I said, man, with Jim, you fault him for loyalty. And people say, oh, well, he's too emotional or whatever, but you fight and you willing to give your life for a man that sits up now and plays with it, and like Jim said, what background or what do we stand on here when you go around and you play with another man's enemy, or you chilling with the enemy, or the ops, as people like to say nowadays, Is he wrong for that? Like, okay, I had a problem with a few people. Who don't? At one time, you could have said that about 50. It's what these people thrive for. It's what thrived them to where they're at today. That beef, that mentality, are willing to take on any and everybody who opposes what you represent. I respect that perspective from Jim. That's all I want to say.
Perspective. We get into the shout outs. We got a whole bunch of them, but we kind of tried to pick the best ones. Darius Muse commented on the Young Dolph and Yo Gotti situation. Said that Young Dolph is doing his thing, no lie, but he can't be king of the Memphis if he ain't from Memphis, in his opinion. That's a good point. I didn't mention that. I didn't even think of that. Young Dolph was born in Chicago, so you can't be king of Memphis if you're not from Memphis. Bam. Door closed right there.
No doubt.
Julius Denard. He said, Gotti been around since 97, 98. Check out the Go Gotti joints. And basically, he's in this whole thing, he said Gotti is 10 times over what Dolph is doing, simply because everything Dolph is doing, Gotti did 10 years ago.
Bottom line.
I feel like that. Number 4, RTYME. So I guess it's before our time. Said Dolph is doing better than Gotti. because he did it without a label from beginning to end. And that's what I was saying. I feel you. Before our time. Thank you. You're a smart dude. Yeah, and we got these. Don't be alarmed. Tyler C said, I agree about a war. Blacks are not shit. They act like they are dominant force, but they are confused. A regular white working man can buy 5 guns with 1 week's paycheck. You don't know who you're fucking with. Is that a threat? Thank you, Tyler C. Thank you, Tyler C. We like the racist white folks too. Please watch this. Tyler C also said, oh, he got 2 of them. Most white people own 10 or more guns and teach their 7-year-old kids how to kill niggers. Don't try us. Just step down and surrender. Let me say it like I think he says, how he sound. Most white folks own 10 or more guns and we teach our 7-year-old how to kill niggers. Tyler C, you're awesome. You're great. You're great. This is why the show exists. That's why I use the word cracker every day, baby. Thank you for that. Last but not least, Gregory Jones. You 2 guys are doing a great job. Information is power. Keep talking about what's going on around your neck of the city. And that's what we love to hear. All jokes aside, we appreciate that, Gregory Jones. We went a little bit long today, but this is an important topic. So, hey, it's hip hop. Get over it.
We back.
Peace.